Okay, let's go ahead and unpack this. Today we are doing a deep dive into a book that, honestly, usually exists in people's minds as, well, two things.
Right, a scandal or a punchline.
Exactly. It's either the book you are absolutely not supposed to read, or it's become this shorthand for a very specific, very dark kind of relationship.
Yeah, the cultural baggage around it is incredibly heavy.
It really is. But rarely do we actually take it apart to see how the machine works, you know?
Yeah.
So today we are diving into the source material on Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita.
Which is a massive topic. I mean, the baggage we just mentioned, it so often obscures the actual text.
Yeah.
But if you push the scandal aside for just a moment, what we are left with, according to the analysis we're looking at today, is a brilliant literary puzzle.
Puzzle, yeah, I like that.
It's a study in obsession, yes, but it's also a deep study in how language itself can be weaponized.
And that's the thing that always gets me about this material. The protagonist, Humbert, is a monster. I mean, there is no getting around that fact.
Unquestionable.
But he's a monster who speaks like a poet. Our source describes him as disturbing yet eloquently articulate. And that's the trap, isn't it? You find yourself almost listening to him.
That is the central trap of the entire novel, and Nabokov sets it very intentionally. He creates a narrator who is deeply unreliable, morally repugnant, but who arguably has the most beautiful voice in the room.
Which is terrifying.
It is. And to understand why he writes him that way, we actually have to look at Nabokov himself, not just as a Russian-American novelist, but as a scientist.
Oh, right. This is the detail that completely unlocks the style for me. Vladimir Nabokov wasn't just a casual bug catcher. He was a serious lepidopterist.
A butterfly collector, yes.
But not just a hobbyist running around a field with a net. He was a legitimate, dedicated expert. He spent years dissecting them, classifying them in intricate detail.
Exactly. And if you think about how a scientist treats a butterfly, it is a very specific mix of admiration and, frankly, cruelty.
Right, because you have to kill the thing to preserve it.
You pin it to a board, you spread its wings out, and you study the iridescent scales under a microscope. And our analysis points out that this is exactly how Nabokov treats his characters, and specifically how Humbert treats the object of his obsession. He pins her down.
He captures her in this intricate, precise, almost clinical detail. It's beautiful, but it's completely static. He doesn't want her to be a living person. He wants her to be a specimen.
Precisely. So the mission for this deep dive isn't to just retell the crime story. We really want to look at the complex psychological landscape of this narrator, the weirdly specific supporting characters that populate his world, and how the setting mirrors his internal collapse.
Because it's not just a love story gone wrong, or even just a crime story. The source material frames it as a study in social paranoia and the duality of despair and desire.
Yes, and that paranoia starts way before he ever meets Lolita. I think a lot of readers skip over the backstory, but Humbert's history is bizarre.
It is so bizarre. Before the main events of the book, the source details how Humbert goes through this significant mental health deterioration. He basically has a complete breakdown.
He does, but the details of his life leading up to that breakdown are where you really see Nabokov winking at the reader.
We have to talk about the Arctic expedition.
Oh, please do. It's one of the best details.
So, before he eventually ends up in a sanatorium, Humbert joins a scientific expedition to Arctic Canada. He's out there in the freezing, isolated void. And his job title, his official, formal role on this mission, is Recorder of Psychic Reactions.
They're completely absurd.
What does that even entail? Is he standing on a glacier with a clipboard, asking the other scientists how the ice makes them feel?
Well, it highlights the absolute absurdity of his existence. Here is a man who is becoming completely detached from reality, and he is tasked with recording the internal states of others in a barren landscape.
The irony is so thick.
Right, because he's the one who is unraveling. The isolation of the Arctic supposedly gave him a brief escape from his own obsessions, but the title itself, Recorder of Psychic Reactions, suggests a man who is trying to clinically analyze humanity because he can't quite participate in it authentically.
It feels like he's trying to turn human life into data, so he doesn't actually have to feel it.
Exactly.
But eventually, the data overwhelms him, he has his breakdown, and he lands in the sanatorium. And this is a key moment in the analysis because we see just how arrogant he really is. You'd think, okay, he's in a mental institution, he's hit rock bottom, he's gonna get help.
Far from it. He views the sanatorium not as a place of healing, but as a stage. He engages in what the text calls a mocking game with the psychiatrists.
He's totally gaming the system.
He is. He realizes that the psychiatrists want a very specific narrative. They want symbols. They want Freudian slips. So he gives them exactly what they want, but he invents all of it.
He fabricates his dreams.
Yes, he constructs these elaborate, completely fake traumas just to watch the doctors earnestly scribble them down in their notebooks.
That is such a psychological power move, but it's also deeply defensive. He's essentially saying, I am smarter than you. You can't diagnose me because I am authoring the story you're currently analyzing.
It's entirely about agency. By manipulating the therapeutic process, he completely rejects their clinical judgment. Our source notes that he finds pleasure in trifling with the psychiatric establishment.
It's a desire for authenticity on his own twisted terms.
Exactly. He refuses to be categorized. He wants to be the author of his own condition, not just a passive patient. And that need for control, that absolute need to be the puppet master, bleeds right into how he interacts with the real world once he gets out.
Which brings us to the real-world characters. When people discuss this book, it's usually just Humbert and Lolita and maybe her mother, Charlotte. But the source material highlights these other minor figures in the background who are actually essential to understanding the mess Humbert leaves behind.
The enablers and the oblivious. Nabokov populates the book with characters who are either too self-absorbed or just too dull to see the monster operating right in front of them.
Let's start with Jean Farlow. She seems like a standard minor neighbor character at first, but she actually triggers a massive shift in the dynamic.
Jean is a fascinating character study because she represents the messy, tragic reality of adulthood that Humbert actively despises. She's a neurotic woman in her 30s. She has this tragic backstory involving miscarriages and battling cancer, and she is just desperate for connection.
And then she makes a move. The incident.
Right. She unexpectedly tries to kiss Humbert.
And this isn't some glamorous Hollywood moment. It's awkward, it's unwanted, and it basically throws a grenade into Humbert's little setup.
It destroys his equilibrium. Up until that point, Humbert and Charlotte were in this suffocating bubble. Jean Farlow popping that bubble introduces competition and jealousy.
It disrupts everything.
It does. It forces Humbert to realize that he can't just exist in a vacuum with his obsession. Real people with real needs and real neuroses are going to keep crashing into his fantasy.
He generates chaos. But then you have the flip side of that coin. If Jean is chaos, the source highlights another character who represents total static safety, Gaston Godin.
Gaston.
The visual description of this guy really sticks with me. He's described as this flabby, dough-faced bachelor with a pear-shaped head.
A pear-shaped head, yes.
And he dresses entirely in black. He lives in this cluttered attic filled with photos of famous historical figures. He sounds like a complete caricature of a lonely intellectual.
He is absolutely a caricature, but he serves a very specific structural purpose in the novel. Gaston offers Humbert absolute security, and he offers that security because he is completely fundamentally oblivious.
He has no idea what Humbert is really doing.
None whatsoever. He's too wrapped up in his own mediocrity. He creates these terrible paintings, he lives in his dusty attic, and he provides a safe harbor for Humbert because he simply doesn't pay attention to the real world. The analysis points to a specific scene where they play chess that illustrates this perfectly.
Gaston is terrible at chess, right?
He lacks focus entirely. He makes foolish, distracted moves. But the key takeaway here is the contrast Nabokov is drawing. Think about the visual of that scene. You have Gaston dull, doughy, static, decaying in his attic, and then you have Lolita,
who is vibrant, dancing, listening to records, full of energy. She is pure life.
Exactly. Nabokov uses Gaston's sheer dullness to highlight exactly what draws Humbert to the girl. It's not just a physical obsession, it's a desperate flight from the decay of his own adult world. Gaston is exactly what Humbert fears becoming, a lonely, pear-shaped man rotting in an attic. Lolita is his perceived antidote to that death.
That makes so much sense when you frame it that way. He's running away from the pear-shaped head, so he grabs his antidote and they go on the run. Which brings us to the setting, which the study aids in our source treat almost as a character in itself. The Great American Road Trip.
Or, as we might call it based on the analysis, the landscape of disappointment.
Yeah, because we all have this romantic idea of the road trip. Freedom, the open road, purple mountains, majesty. But that is absolutely not what Humbert finds.
Nabokov takes that American myth and completely inverts it. Humbert, being this pretentious European intellectual, has these incredibly lofty expectations. He specifically dreams of driving through the Appalachian Mountains. He imagines them as a fantastical version of Switzerland.
He wants the Alps. He wants pristine, snow-capped purity.
And what does he actually get? He gets a suburban lawn and a garbage incinerator.
That image is so bleak, you expect a majestic mountain, and you get a trash burner.
It's the central metaphor for his entire experience in America. He tries to impose his grand European fantasy on the American landscape, just like he tries to impose his fantasy on the young girl. But the reality, the garbage incinerator, the bugs, the oppressive heat, keeps poking through the illusion.
There's a specific detail about the motels from the study aids that I found really unsettling. The home clean restrooms.
Oh, the signage. Yes.
Yeah, the exact ones. The little paper strip across the toilet seat.
Yeah.
The sign that brightly promises home clean restrooms.
It's total kish, but in the context of the story, it's sinister. It offers this illusory sense of safety. It's essentially telling you, don't worry, this is just like home. But for Humbert and Lolita, they are fugitives. They are living a dark nightmare.
Right.
The juxtaposition of that home clean promise against the threatening reality of their actual situation highlights how fake the surface of their world is. It's all just a veneer.
It creates a surreal normalcy. And that feeling really peaks for me at the scene of Charlotte's death, the accident scene.
That scene is an absolute masterclass in conveying horror through banality. Charlotte runs out into the street and gets hit by a car. But Nabokov doesn't focus on the blood or the gore. He focuses entirely on the setting. The Packard car. The freshly manicured lawns, the neighbors stepping out to look.
It's described in the source as a constant chiaroscuro of smiles and frowns.
It's the terrifying persistence of the mundane. The sun is shining, the lawn sprinklers are probably running, and there's a dead body in the street. It amplifies the horror because the world just keeps being aggressively normal. The suburbs don't stop for Humbert's tragedy.
So the walls are closing in on him. He's running from the suburbs, he's running from the law, but he's also running from something else. The paranoia really starts to ramp up on the road. He feels like he's being watched.
This is where the narrative shifts gears into almost a psychological thriller. The hunter becomes the hunted. Humbert starts noticing the same car trailing behind him. He gets weird hang-up phone calls. He realizes he's locked in a game, but he doesn't know the rules.
And the other player is Claire Quilty, the fiend.
Quilty is Humbert's shadow. He's his dark doppelganger. And he torments Humbert not with physical violence, but with intellect. He leaves these elaborate clues in motel registries using pseudonyms and puns.
Which is exactly the kind of arrogant thing Humbert himself would do.
Exactly. The clues reveal that the enemy is highly educated, culturally sophisticated, and possesses a mocking sense of humor. It drives Humbert absolutely insane because it mirrors his own mind perfectly. He's being outsmarted by someone who is essentially a distorted reflection of himself.
There's one scene in this chase sequence that is so visceral, we definitely have to stop on it. The visit to the dentist.
Dr. Quilty.
Right. Humbert tracks down the fiend's uncle, who happens to be a dentist, and he sits down in the chair.
It's a scene of deep vulnerability and violation. The discussion between them revolves around teeth and extraction, but our source points out that symbolically it has nothing to do with dental hygiene.
No.
The extraction symbolizes Humbert's desperate desire for physical transformation. He wants to extract the past. He wants to pull the rot out of his own life. He wants revenge.
But you can't just pull a tooth and magically fix your soul.
You can't. And the pain he experiences in that chair is very real. It's one of the few moments in the text where the physical reality of pain actually pierces through Humbert's dense mental fog.
But the real pain, the actual devastating blow, comes at the very end. The final reunion.
The reunion with Dolly Scheller.
This is the moment that destroys everything he's built in his mind. Humbert finally tracks her down after years. He has this pristine image in his head of his Lolita, his golden, immortal nymphet. And he walks into the house, and who does he actually see?
He sees a real woman. She is heavily pregnant. She is wearing glasses. She looks tired. She is washing dishes or doing mundane household chores. She has completely become Dolly Schiller.
She's not a myth anymore. She's a flesh and blood person.
And crucially, she has moved on. The text notes that this realization causes Humbert incredible grief and nostalgia, but the thing that truly breaks him is the nature of their interaction. He begs her to come away with him. He pours his dark heart out.
And she says no. But she doesn't just reject him emotionally.
She asks for money.
That's the dagger right there.
She agrees to return to him only in a financial sense. She accepts his money to help her start her new life with her husband, who is a deaf mechanic. It is purely transactional. There is no epic romance, no mystical bond. There isn't even passionate hatred. She just needs to pay her bills.
That banality has to be worse than hatred for a guy like Humbert. If she hated him, it would still be a grand passion. But asking for a check, that reduces their entire epic romance to a mere transaction.
It forces him to confront the fact that while he has been trapped in this static obsession, living in a fantasy world of poetry and desire, she has been living in the real world. She escaped him. She grew up, and now she just wants to pay the rent.
The fantasy is completely dead. He's left standing there with his checkbook, and he realizes he never really saw her at all. He only saw exactly what he wanted to see.
And that is the true tragedy, not for him, but for her, the fact that she was never truly seen as a human being.
So if we step back from the wreckage of this story, what are we supposed to take away from all this? We've got the butterfly collector, the fake psychic reactions in the Arctic, the pear-shaped chess player, the garbage incinerator.
I think it all comes back to that central idea of distraction, or what our analysis specifically calls juxtaposition.
How so?
Just as Humbert uses his dark humor and his intellect to distract himself from the horrific reality of his actions, treating psychiatrists like toys, treating women like pinned specimens, Nabokov uses these quirky minor characters and these vivid, almost distracting settings to distract us, the readers.
We get so caught up in the brilliant description of the home clean restroom sign or the rhythm of the prose that we literally forget we are riding in a car with a kidnapper.
Exactly. We laugh at Gaston Godin's pear-shaped head, and for a moment, we aren't thinking about the abuse happening right down the hall.
It really is a trap.
It is a profound trap. And here is the final provocative thought to leave you with, building on the source material. Nabokov uses the most beautiful language in the English library to describe terrible, terrible things. He contrasts the palliative agents of Humbert's affairs with adult women against his dark fantasy. The ultimate question is, does the sheer beauty of the prose make the narrator unreliable to us?
You mean, are we getting tricked by the poetry?
Are we made complicit? Do you, as the reader, romanticize the abuse simply because the sentence structure is so perfect? If the writing wasn't so good, if it was written poorly and plainly, would you see the monster much more clearly?
That is deeply uncomfortable. We all want to believe we're objective moral observers, but we're getting charmed by the villain just like everyone else in the book.
It is the ultimate power of art and, frankly, its ultimate danger.
Well, on that cheerful note, next time you pick up a classic, maybe look out for the traps. Look for the recorder of psychic reactions hidden in the text and ask yourself what the narrator is actually recording.
And ask yourself what the author is trying to hide with all that beautiful scenery.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive into Lolita. We'll catch you on the next one.